videos. In this video, we're going to go through API Explorer collections feature, as well as how to save API requests, how to recall them, and how to create API versions and additional things. Next up, we have API versions. So that works in combine with API, the saved APIs. Okay, so keep in mind API versions works only for a saved APIs, not for standard APIs. So if you want to keep a different versions of the API, you have to create that as your own additional saved API, and then you can create versions. So let's say we have an API. Let's go create a new API, and then let's say get a record. So for example, let's say we have these 3 different contact records. So let's go get S objects and specify one of the request. Okay, so we get this response. That's great. Now I can go and specify a new request. For example, let's say I go and specify this request. Okay, and then we get the response. Assume that we are trying to get a data for which we get an error. Let's say we're testing this particular API. So you want to keep this information so that you can recall it. So let's go first of all, save this API. Let's go save this. Get contact testing, get contact, okay. Year end release, let's call it as a, okay. Let's save it. So now, so because we saved that, if you close it and come back, that API, that response will be there. It is stored. That's great. But what if we go and change this execute to test different API? Okay, then the previous response is gone. Now it saved the new version. If you go back and recall, it saves the last copy of that particular response as well as a request. So now the response that we got as part of the error API, now that is gone. Okay. So to be able to do that, you can actually save, to be able to recall that, you can actually save a version of the API and then you can recall it. So for example, let's go back and simulate that particular error response. So we have the error here. Now I can go here, click on save version with or without the response. Keep in mind the response takes up same, so we provide option, so you choose whatever that you want. In this case, I want to save a version with response, some error contact. Okay, that's great. Now let's go back and test the new API. Okay, now I get the response, I close it, and then I come back. You see that we have the last response, which is not the error response. However, I can click on this, load version. I can load the version that was saved earlier. When you do that, it will bring up all the detail that includes the type, the path, headers, as well as the request and the response body. So you get all the information back to whatever it was at that particular time. So like this, you can store multiple versions. Let's say I'm gonna make a successful call. I want to save this version. Okay. So now I can switch between them. For example, I can load some error contact, or I can load the successful API call. So this can also be used to test various contacts. For example, let's say you're trying to test one particular custom API. You want to pass different query parameters on the headers to test different scenarios. So you can, of course, create different API requests altogether, but API request is kind of heavyweight, right? So that just sometimes, create a lot of noise, creating duplicate ones. In this case, API version is a great way to save that particular API different version so that you can recall them. Okay. And once you not needing that particular version anymore, you can actually delete a version. So when you click here, it prompts you want to delete this particular version. Go ahead and delete it, and then similarly I can go delete, or I can go do delete all, and it will delete all the versions. Okay. So this is about API versions along with API collections in Brobench. Thank you.